But just when I thought that the nightmare was finally over, there came a knock on our door on a rainy afternoon. I opened it to find Tharic standing on the doorstep, his expression haunted and his eyes filled with sorrow. "Jessica," he began, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I need to talk to you." I invited him inside, concern gnawing at my heart as I watched him carefully. And then, in a voice choked with emotion, he told me the truth, the horrifying truth that would shatter my illusions of safety and plunge me into a nightmare from which there would be no escape. 2 days ago, Tharic began, his voice trembling with emotion. "My entire family died in a house fire." I gasped, horror coursing through me as I listened to his tale of loss and despair. And then, slowly, almost reluctantly, he reached into his backpack and withdrew something, a familiar object that sent a shiver down my spine. It was the weeping doll. I took the doll back, Tharic continued, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I thought I could keep it safe, that I could protect my family from its curse. But I was wrong." Tears welled in his eyes as he recounted how he had placed the doll in his antique collection, storing it inside a glass box in the hopes of containing its malevolent influence. And yet, despite his efforts, tragedy had struck, leaving him alone and bereft, the sole survivor of a nightmare that had claimed the lives of those he held most dear. As I stared at the doll in horror, I knew that our ordeal was far from over, that the weeping doll's curse was more powerful than we could have ever imagined. And as Tharic's words echoed in my mind, I realized with a sinking heart that there was no escaping the darkness that surrounded us, no matter how hard we tried to run. As Tharic's trembling words faded into the silence of the room, a heavy sense of dread settled over me like a suffocating blanket. The truth of his words hung in the air, undeniable and terrifying. The weeping doll was a harbinger of death, a cursed object that brought only suffering and despair to those who dared to possess it. I watched in stunned silence as Tharic, his face contorted with grief and fear, placed the doll on the floor before me, his hands shaking violently as he backed away, his eyes wide with terror. And then, with a strangled cry, he turned and ran out of the door, leaving me alone with the cursed object that had brought so much misery into our lives. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my heart pounding in my chest as I stared at the doll lying on the floor before me. Its porcelain face seemed to twist and contort with malice, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light that sent shivers down my spine. Fear clawed at my throat as I realized the enormity of the situation. I was alone, trapped in a house with a cursed doll that had already claimed the lives of so many. Panic surged through me, threatening to overwhelm my senses as I struggled to think clearly, to find a way to escape the horror that surrounded me. But even as my mind raced with thoughts of fleeing, of leaving this cursed place behind and never looking back, I knew deep down that there was no escaping the darkness that had taken root within these walls. The weeping doll's curse was a relentless force, a malevolent presence that would follow me wherever I went, until it had consumed me entirely. With a heavy heart and a sense of resignation, I knelt beside the doll, my hands trembling as I reached out to touch its porcelain form. Its surface was cold to the touch, sending a shiver down my spine as I felt the weight of its curse pressing down upon me like a suffocating fog. And then, with a sudden surge of determination, I made a decision. I would not let the darkness win. I would not let this cursed object destroy any more lives. With every ounce of strength I possessed, I reached out and grasped the doll firmly in my hands, my heart pounding in my chest as I rose to my feet, my resolve unshakable. With a deep breath, I turned and walked purposefully towards the door, the weight of the doll heavy in my arms. And as I stepped out into the night, the rain falling softly against my skin, I knew that the battle was far from over, but I was ready to face whatever horrors awaited me, armed with nothing but my determination to break the curse and free myself from its malevolent grip, once and for all. I left my daughter in my sister's care and decided to go to China to unravel the mystery behind this weeping doll. The journey to China was a tumultuous one, filled with trepidation and uncertainty. Every step I took felt like a battle against the unknown, yet I pressed on, fueled by the desperate need to save my daughter Lily from the clutches of the weeping doll. Arriving at the old antique shop, I was greeted by the sight of weathered doors and faded signs, each bearing silent witness to the passage of time. As I stepped inside, a chill ran down my spine, and I found myself face to face with the shopkeeper, a frail old man whose eyes seemed to hold the weight of centuries. To my shock, he recognized the doll immediately, his reaction a mixture of fear and recognition that sent a shiver down my spine. His hesitation was palpable as he advised me to seek out a priest in the forest village, a man who held the key to unlocking the secrets of the weeping doll's dark past. With a heavy heart, I embarked on the next leg of my journey, traveling for days through rugged terrain and dense forests until I finally reached the secluded village. The priest, a solemn figure cloaked in shadow, greeted me with a mixture of fear and reluctance, his gaze flickering nervously to the doll cradled in my arms. At first, he attempted to drive me away, warning of the dangers that lurked within the doll's cursed form. But as I pleaded with him, tears streaming down my face, he relented, revealing the tragic tale of the doll's creation, a tale of love and loss, of a mother and her child torn apart by a cruel twist of fate. As the priest's words filled the air, weaving a tale of tragedy and despair, I felt a chill creep down my spine. The story of the weeping doll's creation unfolded before me like a dark tapestry, each thread a testament to the horrors that had befallen the mother and child. The woman, a skilled artisan who crafted porcelain dolls with meticulous care, had once known a life of peace and serenity in the small village. But her world was shattered when her husband succumbed to an unknown illness, leaving her to raise their child alone. One fateful day, as she worked in her humble abode, a shadow fell over her doorstep, a sinister figure whose presence filled her with dread. It was the evil man, his intentions dark and twisted as he sought to abduct the woman and claim her as his own. But the child, brave and defiant, refused to cower in the face of danger. With a courage beyond her years, she hurled porcelain dolls at the intruder, each one a weapon in her desperate bid to protect her mother. Yet, despite her valiant efforts, tragedy struck in the cruelest of forms. The evil man, fueled by rage and malice, snuffed out the child's innocent life with a single stroke of his blade, leaving behind marks of violence that marred her delicate form. In the chaos that ensued, the woman's maternal instincts took over, driving her to fight tooth and nail against her assailant. But as the flames of vengeance consumed her home, she realized with a heavy heart that she had failed to save her beloved daughter from the clutches of death. With a heavy heart and tears streaming down her cheeks, the woman made a fateful decision, a decision born of grief and desperation. She set fire to her home, embracing the flames as they devoured everything she held dear, her soul consumed by an all-encompassing darkness. And amidst the ashes and embers, one doll stood untouched by the inferno, a silent witness to the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. It was the weeping doll, its porcelain form unblemished by the ravages of fire, a haunting reminder of the love and loss that had torn a mother and her child apart. As the priest's voice faded into the ether, the weight of his words hung heavy in the air, casting a pall over the room. The story of the weeping doll's tragic origins echoed in my mind, filling me with a sense of sorrow and determination. The jungle loomed before me, an impenetrable wall of green that seemed to stretch on endlessly. Every step I took felt like a battle against the unknown, yet I pressed on, fueled by an unyielding determination to confront the source of the weeping doll's curse. With each passing moment, the air grew thick with tension, and the sounds of the wilderness seemed to close in around me, the eerie cries of nocturnal creatures echoing through the darkness, the rustle of leaves underfoot like whispers of warning. But I could not falter, not now. I had come too far to turn back, my resolve as unyielding as the steel blade clenched tightly in my hand. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I stumbled upon a secluded clearing, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. There, lurking in the shadows like a spectre of death, stood the evil man who had wrought such devastation upon the mother and child. His eyes gleamed with madness and malice as he lunged at me, a primal roar tearing from his lips. Yet, even as fear threatened to consume me, I stood my ground, my heart pounding in my chest. But I was not alone in my quest for justice. Beside me, the weeping doll materialized, its porcelain features contorted with rage. With a silent nod, I knew that it shared my determination to see this evil man brought to justice, to end the curse that had plagued us for so long. With a swift and decisive movement, the doll launched itself at the man, its tiny hands clawing at his flesh with a ferocity that belied its delicate appearance. In a frenzied struggle, the evil man fought against the onslaught of the doll's relentless assault, but it was futile. With a final, guttural scream, he collapsed to the ground, his lifeless body lying motionless in the clearing. And as the echoes of the confrontation faded into the night, a profound silence descended upon us, broken only by the ragged breaths of the weeping doll. Yet, amidst the chaos and carnage, there was a sense of closure, a feeling of justice served and a curse broken. With the evil man vanquished and the weeping doll's vendetta fulfilled, a wave of relief washed over me, my heart lighter than it had been in years. Returning home with the weeping doll by my side, I could sense a change in the air, a shift in the fabric of reality that heralded the end of our harrowing ordeal. And as I watched my daughter Lily play with the doll, a sense of gratitude washed over me. Together, we had faced our demons and emerged victorious, our spirits unbroken and our hearts filled with hope for the future. And though the memory of our ordeal would forever linger in the recesses of our minds, we knew that we had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before.